This isn't a story that begins with a press conference or a headline. It starts with a whisper, a faint ripple in the undercurrents of power, heard only in the guarded corridors of the FBI. The voice behind it? Dan Bongino, Deputy Director of the FBI, a man whose instincts for uncovering hidden threats are as sharp as his reputation is unyielding. His target wasn't a cartel kingpin or a rogue hacker. It was a 50-year-old woman from Litchfield Park, Arizona, named Christina Marie Chapman, whose suburban facade concealed a $17 million fraud operation that poured money into the hands of a foreign adversary. North Korea. This wasn't a casual scam. It was a calculated betrayal, a scheme that infiltrated over 300 American companies, from Silicon Valley tech giants to defense contractors, and threatened the very fabric of national security. Pause for a moment. How does an ordinary woman from Arizona become the linchpin of a plot tied to a regime half a world away? What kind of audacity or desperation drives someone to weave a web so intricate it fools Fortune 500 CEOs? And how did Dan Bongino, with his relentless pursuit of justice, unravel it all? This is no movie script. This is a story of ambition, deception, and a takedown that shook the foundations of trust. Subscribe if you're against North Korea's actions. Let's pull back the curtain on Christina Marie Chapman's empire of deceit, a scheme so audacious it thrived undetected from October 2020 to October 2023, raking in $17.1 million in illicit revenue. Picture a quiet house in Litchfield Park, Arizona, a sleepy suburb where neighbors wave and lawns are neatly trimmed. But inside Chapman's home, there were no family photos, no cozy furniture, no signs of ordinary life. Instead, there were over 90 laptops, each one a portal to a lie, meticulously arranged like soldiers in a silent army. She called it her laptop farm, a nerve center humming with deception, where North Korean IT workers, cloaked in stolen American identities, infiltrated the very heart of corporate America. These weren't small-time scams targeting corner stores. Chapman's operatives secured remote jobs at 309 U.S. companies, Fortune 500 titans, a top 5 television network, a Silicon Valley tech giant, an aerospace and defense contractor, even a luxury retail chain, plus 2 international firms. These were high-value sectors: gaming, artificial intelligence, automotive manufacturing, media conglomerates, where sensitive data and intellectual property were not just assets but potential weapons. Chapman was no mere participant. She was the architect, the linchpin, the quiet maestro orchestrating a symphony of fraud. Her role? To create the illusion of legitimacy. She stole the identities of 68 U.S. citizens, real people with real lives, whose names were twisted into fake resumes, forged credentials, and fabricated backgrounds. These identities were used to apply for remote IT jobs, often through temporary staffing agencies that never suspected the resumes were lies. Chapman didn't stop there. She verified stolen identities for her North Korean partners, ensuring they passed corporate background checks. She installed software on company-issued laptops, logged into systems remotely to mimic US-based activity, and even handled payroll logistics, depositing paychecks into her own US bank accounts. From there, she funneled millions to operatives in North Korea, China, Russia, the UAE, and beyond, keeping a slice of the profits for herself. Her operation was global, shipping hardware, laptops, components, even routers, to countries like Pakistan, Nigeria, and China, ensuring her shadowy partners had the tools to maintain their masquerade. But this wasn't just about money. The $17.1 million was staggering, but the real threat lay in what the North Koreans were after: access. These weren't just workers cashing checks. They were probing, testing, digging into systems that held proprietary code, trade secrets, and in some cases, national security data. Court documents reveal they attempted to infiltrate 2 U.S. government agencies on 3 separate occasions. Efforts that, while largely unsuccessful, sent chills through the intelligence community. The scale of the damage was breathtaking. 70 Americans found their identities tangled in a bureaucratic nightmare, facing false tax liabilities as Chapman's scheme filed fraudulent tax reports with the IRS and Social Security Administration. Companies, from a major car manufacturer to a luxury retail chain, were left exposed, their systems potentially compromised, their trust betrayed. The North Koreans used AI to craft convincing personas, blending into corporate Slack channels and Zoom calls, all while operating from thousands of miles away. Chapman's laptop farm was the perfect cover, exploiting the rise of remote work, where physical presence was irrelevant and trust was assumed. How did a 50-year-old woman with no public profile become the fulcrum of a scheme tied to a sanctioned regime? Was it hubris, the thrill of outsmarting corporate giants? Or was it coercion, a deal struck in the shadows with operatives who knew how to exploit desperation? The mechanics were meticulous. Chapman submitted falsified documents to the Department of Homeland Security over 100 times, ensuring her fake employees stayed under the radar. She coordinated with North Korean handlers through encrypted channels, her communications cloaked in code. She shipped packages to far-flung corners of the globe, each one a thread in a web that stretched from Arizona to Pyongyang. The operation was so seamless it ran for 3 years, undetected, a silent invasion of America's corporate backbone. But let's pause. How does someone like Chapman, living in a quiet suburb, connect with a regime like North Korea? What kind of ambition or fear keeps a scheme this bold running for so long? And why did it take 3 years for anyone to notice the cracks? The answers lie in a perfect storm of opportunity, the anonymity of remote work, the trust of corporate hiring, and a woman who saw a chance to profit from chaos. Yet in those same shadows, Dan Bongino's gaze was sharpening, ready to tear it all apart. Dan Bongino isn't a man who stumbles into victories. A former Secret Service agent with a nose for threats, he rose to FBI Deputy Director with a reputation for seeing what others overlook. In late 2023, a tip reached his desk. A faint signal amid the noise of routine intelligence reports. Suspicious bank transfers, stolen identities, and whispers of North Korean operatives hiding behind American names. Most would have dismissed it as too far-fetched, a suburban woman aiding a rogue nation. But Bongino saw the pattern. He didn't call a press conference or alert the media. He went silent, assembling a task force of FBI counterintelligence agents, IRS criminal investigation experts, and cyber specialists. Their mission? Follow the money, map the network, and expose the truth without tipping off the target. The investigation was a masterclass in precision. Bongino's team tracked Chapman's financial transactions, uncovering deposits from major U.S. companies flowing into her accounts, then out to foreign entities. They monitored her home, watching as laptops arrived from corporate offices labeled with post-it notes bearing company names and stolen identities. Surveillance revealed packages shipped to China, the UAE, even Nigeria, hardware that should have stayed in the U.S. Wiretaps captured encrypted communications, cryptic but damning, linking Chapman to handlers abroad. Bongino knew this wasn't a one-woman show. She was a cog in a larger machine, a facilitator for North Korea's global ambitions. But he also knew rushing in would spook her and her contacts. So he waited, building an airtight case, cross-referencing bank records, IP addresses, and shipping logs. Every move was calculated, every lead pursued with surgical focus. What kind of mind sees through a scam this bold? And what did Bongino know that made him so relentless in his pursuit? May 16, 2024. The sun rose over Litchfield Park, Arizona, casting a soft glow on quiet streets where neighbors sipped morning coffee, unaware of the storm about to break. For Christina Marie Chapman, it was just another day in her carefully constructed world. A world of lies woven so tightly they fooled Fortune 500 executives and government agencies alike. But in the shadows, a different force was moving. Dan Bongino, FBI Deputy Director, a man whose career was built on piercing through deception, had set his sights on her. His team, a tightly knit unit of counterintelligence agents, cyber specialists, and IRS investigators, had spent months building a case as unyielding as steel. On this morning they struck, not with the chaos of flashing lights or blaring sirens, but with the chilling precision of a team that knew every move, every secret, every thread of Chapman's empire of deceit. The warrant was in hand, the evidence overwhelming, and the orders clear. Dismantle the operation that had funneled $17.1 million to North Korea, a regime that thrived on America's blind spots. At 6:47 a.m., FBI agents approached Chapman's unassuming suburban home. No battering rams, no shouted commands, just a firm knock on the door. When it opened, they stepped into a space that was less a home and more a clandestine command center, a nerve hub pulsing with betrayal. Rows of laptops, over 90 in total, lined makeshift tables, each one tagged with a post-it note bearing the name of a U.S. company and a stolen American identity. Bank statements, shipping receipts, and encrypted chat logs were scattered across desks, a paper trail of deceit so blatant it seemed to mock the corporations it had fooled. The air was thick with the hum of cooling fans and the weight of secrets. Chapman stood there, her face a mask of resignation. She didn't resist. She didn't need to. The weight of Bongino's investigation had already crushed her carefully built facade, leaving no room for escape. The raid was a masterclass in meticulous execution. Agents moved with choreographed precision, cataloging every laptop, every document, every digital footprint. They seized the 90 laptops, each loaded with software designed to mask the true locations of North Korean operatives, allowing them to mimic US-based workers from thousands of miles away. Bank records revealed a staggering $17.1 million in transfers flowing through Chapman's accounts, with $284,552 explicitly earmarked for North Korean recipients, funds that could have fueled weapons programs or cyber attacks. Shipping logs detailed a global web. Hardware sent to addresses in China, the UAE, Pakistan, Nigeria. Each package a lifeline for a scheme that stretched from Arizona to Pyongyang. Chapman's communications were a goldmine. Carefully coded messages exchanged through encrypted channels with operatives in far-flung corners of the globe. These weren't casual texts. They were the backbone of a conspiracy, confirming her role as the linchpin, the quiet orchestrator who made it all possible. Bongino's team didn't just collect evidence, they dissected an empire. They found notes detailing payroll scams, instructions for falsifying Department of Homeland Security submissions, over 100 instances where Chapman had lied to federal authorities to keep her fake employees in play. They uncovered spreadsheets tracking stolen identities, 68 in total, each one a life disrupted, a citizen left to untangle false tax liabilities and fraudulent filings with the IRS and Social Security Administration. The scope was dizzying. 309 U.S. companies, from a top 5 television network to a major car manufacturer, had been duped, their systems potentially exposed to foreign operatives probing for secrets. Even more chilling, the North Koreans had attempted to infiltrate 2 U.S. government agencies on 3 occasions, a bold move that underscored the scheme's threat to national security. Bongino, from his command post, had anticipated every angle. His team had spent months watching Chapman, intercepting her calls, tracking her shipments, mapping her financial flows, ensuring no detail was overlooked. The indictment, unsealed that same day in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, charged her with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and conspiracy to launder monetary instruments. It wasn't just a legal document, it was a declaration that Bongino's FBI had struck a blow against a hidden enemy. But let's pause and ask the questions that echo in the aftermath. How did a single woman, operating from a suburban home, fool corporate giants and government agencies for 3 years? What kind of oversight, or arrogance, allowed her to build a network that reached the heart of America's economy? And what does this say about the vulnerabilities Bongino's FBI is now racing to close? The raid wasn't just about catching Chapman. It was about exposing a system that let her thrive. The laptops, the bank records, the coded messages. They were pieces of a puzzle that revealed not just one woman's ambition, but a regime's audacity to exploit America's trust in remote work, in digital systems, in the assumption that a name on a resume is who they claim to be. Bongino's team didn't just dismantle an operation, they tore open a wound, exposing how easily a foreign adversary could infiltrate the very companies that drive the nation's innovation. Chapman's empire fell that day, but the real question lingers. Was her capture the end of the threat, or just the beginning of a larger reckoning? And what did Bongino see in those final moments before the raid that convinced him to act with such unrelenting precision? On July 24, 2025, Christina Marie Chapman stood before U.S. District Court Judge Randolph D. Moss in Washington, D.C. Her sentence, 102 months, 8.5 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release, a $176,150 judgment, and forfeiture of nearly $285,000 in illicit funds. But this wasn't just about one woman's fall. It was a signal, a warning orchestrated by Dan Bongino to North Korea and its operatives. The U.S. is watching, and no one is untouchable. Yet the scars remain. Over 300 companies, from media giants to defense firms, were deceived, their trust betrayed. 70 Americans faced the lingering nightmare of stolen identities, their financial lives tangled in bureaucratic chaos. And the specter of North Korea's ambitions, potentially fueled by Chapman's millions, looms larger than ever. Bongino's takedown exposed a chilling reality. North Korea's reach is not confined to missile tests or cyber attacks. It's in our companies, our systems, our suburbs. The laptop farm was a stroke of genius, exploiting the rise of remote work and lax hiring practices. But it also revealed weaknesses, corporate vulnerabilities, identity verification gaps, and the audacity of a regime that sees America as a playground. Bongino, from his perch at the FBI, isn't done. Sources whisper of new investigations, new targets, new shadows in the crosshairs. Chapman's arrest was a victory, but it's also a question mark. How many other facilitators are out there, hiding in plain sight? What other schemes are funneling money to adversaries under our noses? And what does it mean when a single woman can hold the keys to a $17 million empire that threatens national security? This isn't the end, it's a warning. Dan Bongino's FBI proved it can strike with precision, but the real battle is just beginning. Because in a world where trust is a commodity, the next Christina Chapman is already out there, waiting for her chance. Subscribe and hit like if you admire the outstanding actions of the FBI and Dan Bongino.